About weed, smoking weed, not eating gummy bears and taking tinctures, although, marijuana tinctures, etc. People use them for pain, for medical purposes, by all means. But there is a consensus idea, especially in spiritual circles, to a certain degree, that marijuana is a very spiritual substance, and smoking it induces spiritual states. Now, before I go any further with that, I just want to give some input from another side. And again, as I've said in my other videos, I make these videos to inspire, because I find it inspirational to speak about things. Apart from painting, my paintings are expressions of life, and then I also like to talk about life, so to speak. Before making any assumption about anything, it's imperative to find out what you are. Getting a glimpse, getting an idea, both with words and with direct experience, or apperception, the perception before the perception. You know what I'm saying? The perception of reality, so to speak. Come to grips with that first. You don't need marijuana for that. You don't need drugs for that. You can get all those as an experience, you get that on drugs. And that's what a lot of people go for. But believe me, when you start to see what you are, there's no, I don't want to say need, because it's not about a need. Your life won't flow in partaking of that. You really start to see that it's not about that. If you listen to what the sages say, quite the sages, many sages, thousands of sages have come and gone. The sage, what is a sage? A sage is consciousness, the realization of self as consciousness and beyond. The experience of that, the happening of that in the human form. And the reason why I say the human form, because it's only in the human form that occurs. It's only the human that can say, I think, therefore I am. And then realize that because I am, the world is. That without I am, there is no universe. The universe appears in me, not the other way around. It's only the human experience that has that, apparently. Of course, if you believe other than that, go and prove it. But you're going to need a mental process to prove it, a mathematics. But what I'm speaking about and pointing to, for want of a better word, but in a spiritual sense, it's consciousness itself has to say about it. It's in that direct experience. Only happens with a human. So let's get down to the marijuana. Let's look at consciousness. So consciousness is in the wetness. It's in the food. It's in the body. Marijuana is consciousness. It's not just a plant. It's consciousness. A crystal is also consciousness. Water is consciousness. But if you look at all these elements, there are different experiences and interactions that can be had with them, that they're all consciousness. Let's look at the marijuana again. When you partake of marijuana, is extremely powerful. And I think that most people underestimate and misuse the substance for the wrong reasons, for egocentric reasons, because it activates the body on many different levels. A lot of people get wisdom, knowledge spews forth, but it spews forth. And that wisdom, that realization happening in the moment is in the end just a lot of words. Of course, any sage, the lifetime teaching of a sage, just a bunch of words. But the principle, the absolute principle that comes through the words is not there in marijuana, because it's not a human. So you can learn a lot from marijuana, mushrooms, mycelium, ayahuasca, all those things. And people swear by it. There's all kinds of experiences that can be had. I mean, it's the same as going to satsang and sitting with a spiritual teacher. You're going to have experiences, but they are experiences, and they happen in the moment. And realization happens in the moment, and then it's gone. It has a beginning and an end. But the human experience of the self, of the absolute, doesn't come and go. There's a difference, but it's subtle, and you can get completely caught up in it, because there are very serious teachings around ayahuasca and etc. And I'm sure that people that listen to these words will say, oh, look at this guy going off on a tangent, he knows nothing. No. Think what you want. But what I'm saying to you, I want you to be inspired to find out that which doesn't change. What is there before your birth? What is there after your death? What is now? And what gives reality to everything? You won't find that in marijuana. You won't find that in a mushroom. You won't find that in a crystal. These are all, or in water, or out in space, or in all the elements, fire, water, ether, you name it. You won't find yourself there. So, more than anything, these substances are entrapments. If you really feel you want to take them for whatever reason, take it, but get to grips with what you actually want to do with it. Because abusing it is abuse. If you want to abuse God, there's going to be, a whole lot of stuff that happens around that. If you want to spit on the divine, there's a whole lot of, can you get my picture? So if you smoke weed, just because you are with your friends and you party or whatever, that's a misuse of it. Because it is recreational, but it's very powerful. It's got to be used in the right manner. You've got to know what you're dealing with. And how are you going to know what you're dealing with if you don't even know yourself. You just fool yourself. So the inspiration is to find out, do an investigation on yourself, on the self. Find out who you are. Because there's this huge assumption with users that they know who they are. And they communicate with the gods and the UFOs and the fairies and everything. So what? It's got nothing to do with self-realization. And you are the self. So if you're going to neglect that, there's a whole life experience that comes around with that, with neglect. You come around to it somewhere, at some point. But is it necessary? If you really know, then now we start talking about narcissism and, psychological conditions of destructive, self-destructive psychological conditions where we bring people in to support ourselves. And out of that comes wars and horrific circumstances of suffering imposed on animals, on the earth, and on humans themselves. All because of a neglect. It's like having a sense of know-it-all. You don't have to look. Contempt prior to investigation. I've heard of that one before. I think Sada Bob said something like that. Contempt prior to investigation. Just some ponderings.